Thank you all for being with us today. We are hosting the Great Debates. Something that caught my eye in the news, and you may have heard this, the brains of two genetically edited girls born in China last year may have been changed in ways that enhance cognition and memory, scientists say. The twins, called Lula and Nana, reportedly had their genes modified before birth by a Chinese scientific team using new editing tool. And what they found afterwards was that the DNA, the deletion of this piece of DNA, makes mice smarter and improves brain recovery. So that's kind of a fascinating development. And then, in other news, we have stories all over the world about how robots are taking our jobs and eventually taking over the world. So to debate some of these issues with us today, we have three face-offs. So first up, we have Dov Greenbaum, who is the director of Zvi Meitar Institute for Legal Implications of Emerging Technologies. Dov is assistant professor in the Department of Molecular Biophysics and Biochemistry at Yale University School of Medicine. He's also an intellectual property attorney with Reinhold Cohn. No? Sorry. Oh. Okay. Okay, and against him is Morris Laster, medical venture partner at R-Crowd. Dr. Laster is the founder of Kitov Pharmaceuticals, and he serves as chief executive officer of the Clean Medical Limited and Vital Spark. He's a healthcare entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in the biopharmaceutical industry and is committed to building a robust pipeline of proprietary therapeutic products. So, with that, Dov is going to take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much. Like you, we gave up our spot online for the Impossible Burger, so thank you very much for coming here. Looking forward to that. So just to clarify the fake news, so I'm a professor of law at IDC Herzliya. I am a research affiliate in molecular biophysics and biochemistry at Yale. I no longer practice intellectual property law, okay. Oh, and I direct an institute that looks at the ethical, legal, and social implications of new and emerging technologies in the areas of high-tech and biotech. So, given that, all these things, I come here today sort of conflicted. Firstly, because I am staunchly in favor of innovation, being on the receiving end of people who had tried to inhibit my innovation while I was doing my doctorate, people who had tried to stop me from doing my research for a whole host of reasons. Nothing malicious or anything, nothing. I wasn't doing anything evil that I'll admit to. But on the other side, I'm really fearful of the people that will misuse these sorts of technologies. So, two particular groups that come to mind are the DIY biohackers and for the grinders, the other grinders, as they're known. The people who take genetic technology, be it CRISPR, be it whatever, into their own hands. They're based out of the garages. There's biohackers here in Israel, and there's basically nothing stopping them. For the most part, they're basically benign. They make anyone here a DIY biohacker? They basically make glow-in-the-dark bunny rabbits. It's cool stuff, but for the most part, they're not making diseases. They're not making viruses and stuff like that. The other group that I'm kind of afraid of are the misguided parents, the sorts of parents that may use CRISPR technology to enhance their child without thinking through the consequences. So we have the issue of the group in China, which probably didn't think through all the consequences of the use of the CRISPR technology there. And of course, there's obviously parents that may be misguided in how they want to genetically modify their children. That said, I think permissionless innovation is a scary thing. I don't think that there should be a total lack of innovation. And obviously, I think regulation is the wrong way to go. Regulation is slow and clunky and often based on popular understanding or misunderstanding of a particular technology. I think self-regulation is a total mess. We have to only look back to the Asilomar conference from the 80s, where we promised the world that we weren't going to use basic biotech technology, and the next day we all went ahead and, well, not me, I wasn't there yet, but we all went ahead and we all started using that technology the next day. So self-regulation is not going to work, and a regulatory system is not going to work, particularly if it's government-based. It doesn't take any effort to go from one jurisdiction to another to do whatever technology you want to do. So that said, I think the best system is some sort of licensure system where geneticists and scientists have the ability to be somehow licensed to allow them to use the technology safely with minimal amount of regulation, but keeping in mind a lot of the issues that are relevant to us in science, and also to us in the general society, issues like privacy, issues like intellectual property, issues like misuse of technology, issues like control over the technology. But that said, there are issues with that as well, so that we don't want to have a centralized control of a licensing system. So it's a work in progress. Again, I fully support as much innovation as possible, as I'm sure most people here in the room do. I'm a little concerned about total permissionless innovation, and I think there are ways to control the technology while still allowing it to flourish and be used properly for the betterment of mankind.
And you did that in 4 minutes. Excellent work. Do you have anything to add? You got it.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so we'll turn it over to Morris.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Lydia. So actually, I wanted to start with a little bit of a story, a cautionary tale. In 1859, a guy named Thomas Austin, who lived in Australia, decided that he wanted to have something to hunt because he missed it out of London, England. So he took a crate.
Motion made.
He took a crate of 24 rabbits, tipped it over. Right? He tipped it over, and we all know what rabbits are famous for. They reproduced. And within essentially a couple of years, they destroyed all of the flora and fauna of Australia, what little there was. There were no natural predators for rabbits in Australia, having 50 million years of isolation. There were no parasites. There were no natural predators. The rabbits ran wild, ate up all the grass. The sheep died. The grass died. The topsoil went away. And Australia never recovered. We can then fast forward to in vitro fertilization. We all thought that that would be a great idea in 1978 when Louise Brown was born. And IVF has actually introduced babies to couples who could not have babies. And it's been a tremendous boon to those people. But what about the cost? Forget about the economic cost. There is a 3 to 4 times increase in the incidence of autistic children as a result of IVF treatments. So are we doing a good job? What about the kids? Commercial sale of genetically modified organisms happened in 1994. Today we know that the introduction of a GMO crop causes changes in crop invasiveness, emergence of herbicide and insecticide tolerance, and a disturbed biodiversity. We only thought that we were making them bigger and better. In 2015, the CRISPR-Cas9 system was born, and the ability to do surgical editing of DNA, or our genome, came into being. And as was stated by Lydia earlier, in November 2018, I'm going to read this name, He Jiankui, an associate professor in the Department of Biology at Southern University of Science and Technology in Shenzhen, China. He did the first CRISPR babies. He actually genetically modified these children to be immune to HIV infection by deletion of the CCR5 gene. This occurred in 2018. In 2016, a group at UCLA discovered that the excision of the CCR5 gene caused mice to have improved cognition and memory. In other words, they were smarter. This was done in 2016. They were published in a major journal out of UCLA. So we're not talking about some minor backwater academic in the middle of nowhere. This is UCLA, major institution. The odds that he didn't know that the CDCR5 gene was involved in cognition is slim and none. I don't buy the coincidence. He knew. And out of all the genes to delete out of a baby, HIV infection, really, that was like the top on his list. I mean, he couldn't go after cystic fibrosis, some other major disease that's actually going to impact the life. I mean, we have pretty good treatments right now for HIV. So this kid would have to grow up, acquire HIV, and then get treated. So why CCR5? So I'm a little bit more cynical, and I think actually the intent was a little more nefarious than just making these patients, these kids, immune to this HIV. And I think there actually was an element of trying to create a designer baby, to try and create a smarter person. We all know where people who create smarter people end up. It's a very dark place. You can also edit genomes to have a suicide gene, right? So all of a sudden you can have a tremendous amount of control over a group of people. You can decide that they'll no longer need to be here. I know I'm going really dark, but the point is, unlimited, unchecked usage of these tremendous technologies, I think can lead to a very dark place.
Excellent, thank you. So,
Okay. Morris, thank you very much. I'm going to counter your story from the 1800s with my story from the 1800s. Around 1815, we heard loud noises like the one we just heard, giant rumbles. Mount Tambora erupted with, what's that mean?
that was him.
With the greatest force, yet appreciated by humanity. It blew so much ash into the environment that it literally covered the entire world. It was known as, the following year was known as the year without a summer. It was absolutely, it snowed in Boston in June. And over the course of that year, there was two married people. They weren't married to each other at the time, but they ended up becoming married to each other, and they ended up going over to Geneva, to Lake Geneva in particular, and they sat around there telling themselves horror stories. And one of the horror stories that they told themselves in this dreary winter, or summer, whatever one it was, wasn't clear, was the story of Frankenstein. And we all know the story of Frankenstein. We all know the monster. Well, there are actually three monsters in the story of Frankenstein. There's Dr. Frankenstein, who totally misused the technology, totally abused scientific principles to get to where he wanted to go. There was the monster itself, and of course there were the people who wanted to destroy the monster without understanding the monster. So I'm bringing up this story because it influences the way we think today about emerging technologies, about genetically modified organisms, about robots, about AI. It has a strong influence as how we as society continue to think about this technology. And you can, I mean, this isn't me speaking. A year ago, Science magazine published an entire issue devoted to the influence of Frankenstein on science and technology. And what we see here is there is a fear. There's a fear of the IVF. There's a fear of the GMO. And oftentimes that fear is misplaced. Yes, there are outliers like Dr. He, who was roundly criticized by the entire world. But at the end of the day, the innovation is there to help us. CRISPR is a work in progress. There are a number of, it's a little more error prone than we had predicted. It's a little messier than we thought. There's an intellectual property battle going on, somewhat like our rap battle here. And at the end of the day, we hopefully will get it right, just like we got the rest of bioengineering right. And to show that we really don't need oversight by government, or at least to the extreme, we can just look to the fact that the only story we have to date, even though CRISPR, first of all, CRISPR is an ancient technology, the bacteria brought us to us, the only story to date that we have of anyone abusing the technology to date is one guy, and everyone was against it. Everyone thought it was a horrible thing to do. Everyone thought it was misguided. So I think if we clamp down now, we're going to lose a lot of innovation. We're going to lose the ability to rapidly increase this innovation for genetic engineering, for gene therapies, for who knows what. I think we need to be guided in it, but I think government regulation at this point, given that we only have one story of Dr. He and the cats, but we have to only look to Jerusalem to see the cats, same story. And given that, I think regulation at this point is misguided. But let's let the technology grow in the meantime.
Okay,
Thank you.
back to you.
I actually, I know we're supposed to fight it out, but I tend to agree to some extent in that we should not limit our ability to learn, because this sort of genetic entity does have solutions for us, does have the ability to treat and prevent diseases. What I urge is caution. I think that if you think about it, your toothpaste had undergone more preclinical testing to this point than CRISPR-Cas9 did. And if you think about it, do you really want to play with the gene editing before you actually know what the implications may be? And they're not only implications on society, there are societal implications in the sense of what are you creating, what will that do, not only to the person themselves, but to the society as a whole. And then, what are you creating? Are you creating somebody who's going to be an outlier in society? What are you doing to that person? What is that technology going to happen to that person? What I would urge is just proceed with caution and to think about what it is that we're doing and to not assume that we actually know what the outcome and implications of the various technologies we're playing with will be. A little humility, a little caution, and just a question in mind that says, what are we doing? Are we doing the right thing? Let's test it out. Let's make sure it's okay before we just go off and do things that we may regret later.
Excellent, thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's have a round of applause. Daphne Brown, Mark Slessor.
I guess we'll agree to agree.
There you go. Okay, next up, we're going to discuss our robotic future. Will robots take over the world? Let's allow them to take the stage here. So, for the argument that robots are going to take over the world, and this is nuanced, people. I mean, we can hear within these arguments that these aren't simple topics. These are very complex issues. So we're going to try to break it down as best we can. So we have Doris Schooler, who is the CEO and co-founder of Intuition Robotics, a venture-backed startup company that's developing LEQ, an AI-driven social robot companion. And he formerly served as senior vice president and general manager of cloud-based business. Okay, and then
Doesn't matter.
yeah.
It was a long time ago. Nobody cares.
Everybody cares. Everybody cares. And then the argument against robots taking over the world is Guy Levy, who is the managing partner of, I'm sorry.
NFX.
NFX, thank you. Why don't you do the rest of
Silicon Valley and Israel Seed and A Fund.
that? Okay, fantastic.
And a closet robot lover.
Our fourth partner is a robot.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, so Dora, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, just can you reset the timer there, please? Whoever is in the command and control.
Yeah, you got 15 seconds off the clock, so we'll let
All
you
right,
have
we're
we'll let you have it.
All right, so will robot take over the world? Like any good debate, let's start with definitions. What is a robot? According to the Oxford Dictionary, a robot is a machine capable of carrying out complex series of tasks automatically. Take over, again according to Oxford, is to begin to have control or responsibility for something instead of somebody or something else. And the world has many definitions. The one that's most relevant, I think, again according to Oxford, is our society and the way people live and behave, as in, I will change the world. We didn't define a time limit here, so I'll make it easy for my opposition, and I will attempt to define a period as in the foreseeable future, meaning in the lifespan of people that are born and running around today, like our kids. So, what defines us as society today? Well, how do I define myself? When I get here on stage, when Lydia introduced me, did she say, this is Dor, he loves the beach, cooking, and tries to be the best father and husband he can? No. We define ourselves by what we do. She said, this is Dor, co-founder and CEO of Intuition Robotics, which, by the way, is fundraising on the OurCrowd platform for the next 2 weeks. So.
Take notes, people.
So what are the top jobs in the world? If we look at advanced economies, developed economies, the United States, let's make it hard. The most common job in the United States is, oops, I threw away the wrong car. It doesn't matter. Is retail sales. All right. Amazon bots, recommendation engines, those are all automated. Number 2, cashiers. Amazon Go. I went to a store in San Francisco, I bought groceries, I walked out. No cashier. I got the bill later. It was done through computer vision. Office clerks, there's a new trend called RPA, robotic process automation, and it automates tasks and workflows. Number 4, food preparation. I've seen robots today that make pizzas, salad, cappuccinos, and even bartenders. Number 5, registered nurses. That's a tough one. We need human care. In fact, our own robot, LEQ, attempts to bring people together. But a lot of the job of the nurse, while nurses will stay, checking your temperature, making sure you get your meds on time, things like that, they'll be automated. Waiters and waitresses, come on. Customer service reps, that's how bots started. Janitors, I have 2 Roombas at home. How about you guys? Delivery stuff. Well, there are drones that deliver packages. There are little robots called spaceship robots, believe it or not, that deliver packages. Autonomous trucks, that's gone. And the last is secretaries and admins, topping off the top 10. These ones as well are automated. There's something called Clara AI or Amy AI that can be your automatic admin. So bottom line, the top jobs are being automated. And there are also automation of lawyers and accountants, believe it or not. So that's going to change. The way we define who we are is going to change. So what will we all be? Artists? Composers? Well, that too is being automated. In fact, just earlier this year, there was a painting created by AI that was sold by Sotheby's in auction for over $400,000. I bought my wife a scarf that was designed and printed by AI. She seemed to like it. And there's this thing called Deep Bach that composed music in the style of Bach, confusing experts thinking it was a long-lost piece that was composed by Bach originally. But there's a silver lining. And the silver lining is maybe, just maybe, after robots will take over the world, I'll be able to come here on stage and say, hi, I'm Dor. I like the beach, I like cooking, and I try to be a good father and a good husband.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just for the record, he's still got 37 seconds left.
Yeah, do you want to continue?
So you can
So,
use this time.
hi, guys. So to start with, I want to say that I love robots, and that not only do I have at least as many robots as Dor has at home, but I also invest in robotic startups. So I'm not here to tell you that robots are bad. Having said that, when we think about robots taking over, what I, as a science fiction geek, has in mind is Skynet, or The Matrix, or bad robots that are trying to take over the world. And what I want to talk to you about today is what are the chances that something like this will ever happen? Or what will it need to take for that to happen? And you know, when it comes to everyday robots, yes, that's already happened. I mean, Dor took like a minute of my time describing all the robots that he has at home, so that saves me time, but I do have many of those, and even the dishwasher at home is some kind of a robot, right? Single-purpose robot. But the question is, are we ever going to get much beyond the single-purpose robots? And when you think about it, the next big thing is going to be autonomous driving, because autonomous car is essentially a robot driving the car. However, when we go beyond that, it's becoming much tougher. And let's think for a second about what are the limitations that we have. And there's 2 things that are limitations on robots. The first one is intelligence, what we call AI, and the second one is just the physical interface. And let's talk for a second about both of them. So when we talk about intelligence, there's been a huge progress over the last few years in what's called single-purpose AI. Single-purpose AI is our ability to take a specific task and get a robot, essentially an AI, to do that better and better and better, usually getting at the end of the day to a point where it's done better than human beings. And this started. I mean, when I was, many years ago, I was shocked to see the world chess champion lose to Deep Blue, and recently, Deep Thought, DeepMind beat the world champion Go, which we thought for many years is not going to happen. And these are huge, huge advancements, but the reality is that each one of them is a single-purpose AI. And when we talk about single-purpose AI, clearly when there is a type of calculation that needs to be done again and again and again repeatedly, at a higher and higher pace, and where at the end of the day, the amount of data that you need to crunch is greater than that the human mind can, an AI is always going to be better than humans in this. And the biggest progress we have over the last few years is the ability to identify objects and to identify more complex situations than robots used to be able to do, AI used to do in the past. However, we're still years away from what's called multi-purpose AI, or actually logic building. And when you combine all the knowledge of the current AIs out there, and if you try to put all of them together, you'd still not pass by now the intelligence level of a 5-year-old. So that's on the intelligence side. And while this is progressing, on the multi-modal AI, we're still years away. The second thing is physical. And physical may sound like a small restriction, but the reality is that it's not that simple. The two main things that we have as problems are imitating this, the human hand, the very complex ability to manipulate and touch things and control them. But also even more than that, it's the tactile sensors that we have in our skin. And the sensor that we have in our skins is something that science is not even close to replicating. Our ability to feel, our ability to sense. And so these are two big things. The third big thing, when it comes to the physical restriction, is simply batteries. All these big bad robots are going to be fairly less scary if they're going to run out of battery after 3 hours like my phone, right? So this is a big thing, and we're still not even close to getting these things to work for many, many hours. So we have problems on the intelligence side, we have problems on the physical side, but maybe the biggest problem on top of it is what's called self-healing capabilities. Because at the end of the day, for any one of these machines to be able to continuously improve and continuously be a challenger to mankind, they will need to have what the simplest of organisms have, which is self-healing capabilities, which no robots have today. If you add on top of it the fact that the physical and the intelligence, the computational part, both of them are becoming incredibly expensive, right? We see all these dog robots running around, and they're basically costing millions per piece. But the reality is that none of them can do the simplest thing that my dog can do. When we look at that, we understand that in the foreseeable future, not only do we not going to have Skynet, but even robots that can do some pretty sophisticated things are going to be incredibly expensive, and they're going to only replace some very high-value tasks. So what do I believe? I believe that yes, we're going to lose jobs. All the jobs that Doris said, yes, we're going to lose them. However, I think humanity over time, after the initial pain, is going to be happy that we lost them. When it comes to the more sophisticated things, the more complex things, I think that we're still here to stay for a bit longer. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
So I want to thank Gigi for agreeing with everything I said and trying to change the topic on will Skynet happen, or will robots actually have human feeling in our hands. So I'm willing to concede the point that post a robot takeover, our hands will still be needed to feel things.
Feel the robot.
To feel the robot. But that really isn't the question. Imagine the first dishwasher robot. And a dishwasher is a little bit of a robot because it does a series of complicated tasks autonomously. It's not a big robot with big hands wearing gloves. It's a box that very efficiently washes many dishes at the same time. Lately, pretty quietly too. It's pretty cool. So when we imagine what the future will look like, it will not necessarily need to be humanoid. It's about changing who we are and what we are and how we live our lives. And this will happen. And by the way, everything I mentioned to you are not stuff that will happen within the lifetime of kids running around today. These are things that are happening today. And frankly, 10 years ago, if I would have spoken here and told you about all these things, you would have thought I'm a little bit nuts. So imagine what will happen in 20, 50, 70 years. We don't know. But it will be a radical change. And it will change what it means to be a human. Because today we wake up, we get trained from little age to do a task. We go to work and complete that task, then we retire. And hopefully with LEQ we have a great retirement, which is the product we create. But anyway, that's our lives, and it will change what it means to be human. So will we overcome? Of course we'll overcome. We're the most adaptive creature on at least this planet. But it will change the world, which means, according to the definition we had before, it will take over the world.
Thank you.
So I want to take my 2 minutes to basically speak about two things, which is the real impact of what we spoke about, and the real impact is much deeper than just whether I'm going to be chased eventually by a humanoid or by a dishwasher that became really angry. I think the real issue is that I don't see any governments running around and trying to understand the impact of what this automation is going to cause. And when we think about it, Dor mentioned before jobs, I've actually done this view before, and there's about, in the United States, there's probably around 40 million jobs that are going to theoretically disappear in the coming 25 years because of automation, potentially more. And one of the companies that I'm involved in that has 130,000 people in it, we reviewed what's going to happen in 20 years, and it seemed that more than half the people are not going to be employed in the company if we're going to embrace automation heavily. And so this is really a big social change. And as I said, while I think that longer term humanity is going to be very happy for not having to do these mundane tasks, just like I don't like washing dishes and I'm pretty happy with that robotic box doing that for me. I think that while after the initial pain, this is going to be good, I think the initial pain is going to be fairly painful. And I don't see governments looking at that, and this is something that we all need to think about, because at the end of the day, part of what we're seeing in the world today, the disappointment of the average Joe from the political system is partially because they're feeling left behind. And as automation comes in, they will be left behind. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to leave you with is the thought of what do your kids need to learn as we go into an age of automation. When, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have said that clearly my kids all need to be computer scientists, because that's what got me to places. In reality today, I think my kids are young. I think that by the time they get to work, these are going to be slaves that are going to write codes, or machines that are going to write codes. And it's about creativity, it's about understanding humanity, and it's about understanding that the world is not going to need the same skills that it needs today. Thank you.
Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you. I'd like to bring up my next and last debaters. Dr. Shmuel Shapira and Dr. Gidi Stein. And we're going to be talking about, will manufactured medicines wipe out humanity? So Dr. Shapira is the Director General of the Israel Institute for Biological Research, and Dr. Gidi Stein is co-founder and CEO of Medaware. So, take it away.
Professor Clark from UCLA said that the ultimate bioterrorist is...
Speak into the mic.
Professor Clark from UCLA said that the ultimate bioterrorist is Mother Nature. The death toll from the Spanish flu pandemic during the years 1980 to 1920 was greater than the total number of military and civilian deaths during World War I. Out of 500 million sick, 100 million died, 3 to 6% of the world population. The World Health Organization warns that the potential for emerging infectious disease to spread rapidly and cause global epidemic is a major concern. Globalization, urbanizations, and climate changes increase the risk of pandemics. In the last 50 years, 40 infectious diseases have been discovered, including Ebola, avian flu, swine flu, and SARS, and many others. Vaccination is the most effective medical intervention ever introduced. So far, it has prevented more than 700 million disease cases and avoided more than 150 million deaths. Vaccines save 2.5 million lives per year, while the death toll associated with vaccination, I emphasize it, is estimated to be only a few dozen annually. The only eradicated disease in the world is smallpox. The last case of the disease was reported in 1977, and the WHO declared its eradications in 1980, thanks to the efficient global vaccination campaign. Most vaccines are prophylactic, but since the advent of biotechnology, modern molecular biology techniques are utilized. The first recombinant vaccine manufactured is the one for hepatitis B, and is also the first to prevent cancer, liver cancer associated with chronic hepatitis B. The main obstacles for efficient vaccination program are logistical, economical, and myths spread by anti-vaccination activists. I won't waste my precious time talking about those radicals. Vaccines are very safe, and most of them are cheap. Vaccination is the most cost-effective medical technology. The near future will make them even safer, much friendlier in the aspects of delivery and administration. Pandemic outbreaks require rapid and mass administrations of vaccines in order to reduce mortality and morbidity. Therefore, even in the case of where vaccines are stockpiled and ready, there is no guarantee that they will be distributed and administered to individuals in the time to make a difference. A primary bottleneck in the vaccination process is the small number of healthcare providers. Microarray, which means microneedle patch, can be applied by non-professionals. The same is true for injectable bacteria for vaccinations or self-spreading vaccines which propagate in populations similarly to communicable disease. It can be done using a vector or live vaccines. Only a small number of vaccinated individuals will be required in order to confer protection of the entire population. To overcome the problems of geographic distances, two technologies will be available. Firstly, delivery by drones. Secondly, providing the protecting protein template by email and printing the vaccination using 3D protein printers at clinics and other public institutions. Another major obstacle is the time frame needed for developing the remedy for emergent threats. This is done by synthesis of self-amplifying messenger RNA, the genetic chain responsible for the production of human proteins. In Israel, the only knowledge and experience for vaccine R&D and productions is in my institute, and these crucial capabilities for protecting the population of Israel should be enhanced.
Thank you. You know, as a physician, you know, I make my living giving medications to my patients. In some sense, I like the pharma industry, but there's a dark side to it. You know, vaccination is only a small part of what the pharmaceutical industry does, a good part, but a small part. And let's talk about facts. You know, in the 1980s, pharmaceutical industries have presented a good case that opioid medications for people who actually have pain are not addictive. We actually believe that. 20 years later, 50,000 patients die every year only in the US from prescription opioid addiction. 2 million are addicted, not dead yet, right? False promises. Antibiotics save millions of patients. But in recent years, because of the unsupervised use of these medications, emerging resistance, names like CRE, MRSA, names of catastrophic bugs that we have no cure for that kills millions every day, and let alone talking about vaccines and medications. How are they developed? Who are they tested on? On those poor creatures, on inmates, on prisoners, on children in Africa. And they're not even the ones that can benefit from these medications because they don't have money to pay for it. So who benefits from all this? We, the rich population of the Western world. We live on these medications, but the poor countries in Africa, in Asia, they die of diseases, from multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, from HIV, from malaria. These are catastrophes that we could avoid, but just because they don't have the money to pay for it, we are withholding treatment. And let's put aside human subjects. Let's talk about veterinary, the animals that we eat. They're being fed unsupervised with antibiotics, with hormonal treatment. And what will that do to our children who consume it? Early puberty, maybe autonomic resistance to bacteria. We don't even know what catastrophes really lie ahead. And we just talked about the emerging ability to genetically modify babies, another pharmaceutical industry that is growing. We're basically killing ourselves because we're now unable, or basically deleting the ability for natural selection. This could really be the end of mankind. It took me a very short time to say it because evidence is so strong.
Never throw the baby with the water. Patients should suffer excruciating pain, and severe acute pain should still be treated by opioids. I think that we will talk about antibiotics. We'll also look at antibiotics. Due to abuse, and substitutes are developed, such as bacteriophages, which are viruses that kill bacteria, and microbiome manipulation. Any abuse may be fatal, such as drug abuse by addicts or medication abuse and misuse by physicians. Each medical technology is associated with direct and indirect physical costs, side effects of various severity, and sometimes even major complications and death. Therefore, each technology should be evaluated by some form of assessment, such as cost-benefit, cost-effectiveness, cost-efficacy, or quality-adjusted life years. All these evaluations outweigh benefits versus the burden on the patients and the entire society. It goes without saying that each treatment should be given for the right indications and in the proper way. Medical technologies assessments point to vaccination as the leading cause of effective medical intervention. In spite of all this supporting evidence, we encounter increasing rates of mortality in the Western world, which are related to diphtheria and measles. The cracks in the thin walls of primary prevention may be attributed to individuals' fears, distrust, and misconceptions regarding vaccination. As scientists and healthcare providers, we should progress in two paths, educational and scientific. The educational pathway is beyond the scope of this brief talk, but we should focus on the scientific window of opportunities. Advances in synthetic biology, biotechnology, molecular 3D printing, and transportation promise benefits and opportunities that much outweigh the risk. Rapid planning, synthesis, delivery, and simple modes of administration will compete the rapid rate of disease propagation. We shouldn't miss these upcoming new horizons that will affect the well-being of our world. Thank you.
I'll try to make it short as well. We started with the dark side of pharma. Let's go to the deep side of pharma. We have the deep side, the deep dark side. So, there's no argument that the pharmaceutical industry has great power. The question is, did we give the power in the right hands? I think this is the main question. So let's go back to the real dark history. Let's talk about Iki Farben, right? The pharmaceutical conglomerate in Germany that created, very decent and relevant medications, but also created the Zyklon B that killed millions of patients, millions of inmates in concentration camps in World War II. Let's talk about Shifa Pharma in Pakistan that also created very nice medications, but also created the VX, which is a terrifying nerve gas that was used in terrorist attacks. And let's talk about Turing Pharmaceuticals. In 2015, their CEO decided to upprice their antibiotics by 5,000%, making it available only for the rich. Luckily, he's now going to jail. But that's only the tip of the iceberg that we know of. What about the stuff that we don't know that we don't know? And this really is what's frightening. And really to conclude, pharmaceutical industry is very similar to nuclear power. It has immense potential, but is it given to the right hands? It can really destroy the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for our debaters. Dr. Stein, Dr. Shapira. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our crowd for sponsoring this great debate, and we hope to see you again.